They're just so mellow. My favorite part about reviewing headphones is when they finally click, like when I finally get them and I get to have that listening party, where I'm really jamming the music that I think sounds good on those headphones. And I think I'm going to focus on that experience a bit more from now on. Every headphone review is kind of a journey, and maybe that matters more than the destination. Hashtag sounds deep on YouTube. This is my first experience with Ultrasone, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I'm familiar with certain flavors of German audio, especially from more of a recording perspective. And there are some really interesting claims being made here. So the company sent me a pair of their Performance 880s to test drive and share my thoughts. A lot hinges on this S-Logic technology. The cups and the drivers are positioned to take the whole ear into consideration. Instead of trying to funnel the sound right down your ear canal, the hardware here is positioned lower and forward, so sound hits the outer ear first to open up a more spatial field. That's the claim. For closed back cans, it is impressive how this does seem to deliver a wider soundstage. I spend a lot of time with IEMs, so it's always nice when audio doesn't feel like it's coming from inside my skull. On the geeky tech side, there's a trend happening for 3D audio and spatial manipulation, but there's something refreshing about an old school analog solution for better stereo imaging. The thing I can't judge as well, or at least I can't test as scientifically, is the second claim on the Performance 880s. The secondary claim is that because this is a whole ear design, Ultrasone estimates that this puts 40% less strain on your ears. They should be more comfortable for longer listening sessions. I don't know that I can quantify that claim with actual numbers, so you'll just have to take my anecdotal experiences on what it was like to listen to these. Every piece of technology, every piece of audio gear is a collection of pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses. Now, the general focus for the 880s is, I would say it's definitely more of a lower frequency focus for the tuning on this hardware. Nice rich bass, and then you combine that with that wider soundstage, and these things are really mellow. They're not fatiguing. I think a lot of folks could rock these for longer listening sessions, just like the claims from the manufacturer. So the initial impression was good. The casing overall is plastic, and the shiny metallic accents look okay, but the machining and piecing is very nice. How the arms extend, the full swivel on the ear cups. The clamp on the headband is a little snug, but after years of using field monitors, I personally like a little clamp when it comes to closed back cans. If you're used to comfier open back cans, these might feel a little claustrophobic. But if you're used to closed back monitors, then a little extra passive noise reduction will probably be appreciated. A quick rundown on what else was in the box. We've got a longer cable for home listening. There are two cables included. The other cables is a bit shorter, and this is a travel cable with a focus on mobile, where there is an inline microphone. Meant for phones. I think it's a nice touch when a premium audio label considers mobile use, and they include the right cable for it, a cable with the mic. Test driving the 880s, I spent most of my time plugging them into a FiiO Q3 connected to my OnePlus 9 Pro, and then listening to music over USB Audio Player Pro. The overall sound signature here is low-end heavy and mellow. I don't have the equipment to binaural mic test headphones, but in my brain I was kind of imagining a low peak, and then just a bit of a downward slope through the mids and the highs. This bass is lush, and it kind of rolls over everything. It doesn't stomp on it. Mids are articulated, and the highs never feel strained, but the lows seem to be a critical focus. So I work out of monitors, and recently I've enjoyed firing up some inexpensive planar magnetics. My tastes lean towards exactingly articulate mids, so the 880s are a very different beast. These headphones can bring some rumble, but they're also really smooth. Immediately I thought of other premium cans like the Meze 99. The 880s are a little bit darker in my opinion, but like the Meze, this is not a dull, thumpy mega bass. Depending on your musical tastes, they might get a bit out of control, but they're going to fit a number of genres and other media like games and movies very well. What's kind of funny as I started my sampling, audio like hard rock. I kind of took a little trip down my high school memory lane, and so much of the alt rock scene from back then really wasn't that bass heavy. Lots of industrial noise, thinking White Zombie and Nine Inch Nails. I'm listening to Pretty Hate Machine thinking, well, I mean, dang, the White Stripes bring way more bass than this. So I think the 880s are at their weakest when the tone and clarity of the audio depends somewhat on distortion or buzz. Tracks with some edge are gonna get smoothed over, and you're gonna lose some of that production effect that generates the aggression. Rage Against the Machine is another standard in my listening lineup. As another example, the mix on the guitars is just razor sharp, and then the vocals have to cut through that like a power drill. Now, nothing sounds bad on the 880s, but if that's a good chunk of your listening, I'm not sure these are the best options to drive that kind of sound. Where I was a little torn was on bands like Tool. The guitars don't quite punch how I think they should, but then the drums just open up all around you, and it's not often you feel surrounded by the drum kit on closed back cans. A Tool mix always feels grand. It always feels expansive, and the 880s show that off really well. If you really lean on music with bass, Ultrasone knows how to handle that. Now, I would have thought that highlighting bass on tracks with a lot of bass would be a bass overload. But this marks the difference between cheap mega bass and well-crafted lows. It's crazy to think that Random Access Memories came out over 7 years ago, RIP Daft Punk. But the funk-inspired beats and the club-style kicks just roll off these ear cups. And that led me right over to RTJ4. And while I praise Run the Jewels for how visceral that album is, there's something interesting in how the 880s buff some of the edges on a track like Just. And then the track just jams. And then I kept playing with older and older recordings. There's something kind of old school about this vibe, and in my brain, that linked up with funk and Motown and classic R&B, like some old busted James Brown CD rips. And it was somewhere around firing up Aretha Franklin on Rocksteady that I think I found my hook for these cans. As soon as a bass guitar starts walking or bumping through a track, it's just so sweet. These cans are delicious on that kind of audio. That worked for me on Peter Gabriel as much as it lit me up on the Stubborn All-Stars. I personally jam on mids and articulation, razor wire sharp articulation, but Ultrasone is doing something really easy to grok, and you'll want to wear the 880s for a while. And this is what makes me so lit up about the premium headphone conversation. It moves us far beyond better or worse in some generic spectrum of consumer audio quality. And once we move out of that conversation, we start honing in on crafting a specific audio vibe that complements our unique tastes. It's really kind of magic when you find something that gets your head nodding. I'm really glad I finally got to catch up on this brand. The Performance 880s have been out for a while, and they've been kind of a blind spot in my listening lineup. They're chill, mellow, and sweet. I'll of course leave some links down below where you can find more info on Ultrasone and specifically the Performance 880s. As always, thanks so much for watching, for sharing these videos, subscribing to the channel. Supporting your favorite content creators has never been more critical than it is today. So I greatly appreciate those of you who are checking out the links in the description below. Maybe you're shopping a little merch. That kind of stuff really does help keep production rolling on this channel. There's a full list of all of my affiliates and partnerships on SomeGadgetGuy.com, or you might consider, just maybe, joining the list of names scrolling by on your screen from my Patreon, patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. This list represents basically the coolest people on the internet, so I hope you'll check them out. Now, you know where you can find me around the rest of the web, at SomeGadgetGuy on the Twitters and the Twitch, the Facebooks and the Instagrams, and I will catch you all on the next review.